Hi, everybody. So last time we took a look at drawing some graffiti letters. And if you remember, we drew our letters and then we would outline that letter to create that block letter. So today what I want to do is I want to show you some things that you can do with these letters to make them look a little bit more like graffiti. So we can start with this T, and I'll avoid doing that initial step just so I can show you here. So if we have a T like this, the first thing that we want to take a look at is something called a drop shadow. So what a drop shadow is it's a shadow that sits behind, maybe over a little bit and down, or you could do them up, but I'll show you how to do them one way. And what it does is it just creates a shadow for the letter and makes them look a little bit three-dimensional. So the theory behind a drop shadow is this, is if this is my T, all I'm doing is I'm drawing this exact same T, but just a little bit off-centered. So you can see where my first T is. I'm drawing that exact same T. I'm just moving it over and down. So I have one T sitting on top of another T, and then all I'm doing is in that top T, I'm erasing everything that's inside of it. So that when I do that, what I'm left with then is just this shadow. And then you can see how this creates a shadow, right? So now, obviously, the more complex a letter, the more complex a drop shadow. Like if I draw an S and I have something like this, well, if I draw that same S, and I'm just doing this a little bit lighter, you can see that it gets a little bit more complicated. Okay, so same thing then. I'm gonna erase everything that's in that top S. So I get something like this. And then I'm just left with this little drop shadow here that kind of tucks in here, comes down like this. So that's the theory behind a drop shadow. Now, when you guys do drop shadows, you don't have to draw each letter twice. I'm just showing you how we come to get this. So especially when you're doing letters that are all together. So if I have like my art here that I drew from last week, well, maybe I don't want to have to worry about drawing this whole thing over again. So it's a good idea to get a little bit of practice with drop shadows so that you can figure out how it all works. But after I do enough of them, I can just sort of figure out where these drop shadows are supposed to sit. It's definitely good to get a little bit of practice. So then maybe I have a drop shadow that looks like this for the whole thing. And then I can color that in. So drop shadows, super important in graffiti. They give the letters a lot of depth, make it actually look like graffiti instead of just some big bubble letters, big block letters. So you have something like that. Now, there's other types of shadows you can do too. You don't have to do a drop shadow. You can do something that's maybe a little bit more like a little blockier. So essentially it's the same thing. We're still arriving the same way, getting the shadow, but what we can do is we can start to make these little lines off it. So what I'm doing here is from each corner, I'm making a little diagonal line down, and I'm doing it only in the corners where I could see that. So like this one, if I put one here, it would be inside the letter. So I don't want to put one anywhere where it goes inside the letter. Doing here, same thing up here. If I were to draw one, it would go inside the letter, and I don't want that. Because then what I can do is I can connect these just like this, and then this gives me that three-dimensional letter. Again, if we were doing an S. It gets a little tricky because with the S we get some curves. But same thing, I could start off from the corners. So those corners I can see, this one I can't do. And then what I have to do is I just kind of have to figure out where the other ones would be. So if I take this line and move it up just kind of as far up as I could go where I could see it. Like if I were to put one here, I wouldn't see it, it would go along the line. If I were to put one here, it would go in the S. So you just want to make this wherever you can where it's not going to be inside the letters. The same thing here. If I were to try to put one here, it's in the letter. If I try to put one here, it's in the letter. If I try to put one here, it's still in the letter. If I move down to here, then it's no longer in the letter. And then that way I can start to just follow that shape of the S like that. And then I get my three-dimensional S. And there's all kinds of cool things you can do with these shadows. You know, you can add some stuff to them. That'll make them really three-dimensionally. So stuff like that. All kinds of fun things you can do. So what I would like for you to kind of just play around with here are some drop shadows. Again, you can, a couple of different ways you can do them. And again, if you want to see this all from start to finish, what we get is we draw our little stick figure letter. We draw around that letter, just like this. Get rid of that letter on the inside. And now we can either do our drop shadow letter like this, or you can bring down these corners and you can get more of like a block letter like this. So a couple different ways to do drop shadows, a couple of different ways to add a little bit of depth to your letters. And it takes a little bit of practice, especially if you're not gonna draw it twice. Like I said, if you're gonna draw it twice, it's just a matter of drawing it once like that, and then drawing it again like that, and then just erasing everything that's in that top one. But if you don't want to go about drawing all of your letters twice, well, it takes a little bit of practice before you can figure out exactly where those shadows are supposed to fall. But that is how you do a drop shadow in graffiti. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.